Hello everyone, it's me. Um, I'm gonna be doing a little bit of a breakdown of one of my tracks. I haven't done this like for YouTube before, so I'm not very experienced with it, so bear with me. I do tend to stutter and stumble over my words a lot. So this track is named A Fleeting Memory. It's a rather personal track of mine actually. It's got a bit of a connection, so that's why I chose this one to do first. It's this pretty long, moody synth rock track that I made that's the closer off of my upcoming album, but there's going to be another version of it coming out when that comes around. So the track is 100 beats per minute, 4/4 time, and it's a pretty medium-sized draft. It's nothing too huge. So for those of you who do not come from my Audio Tool community, I'm using Audio Tool. This is a free browser-based DAW, so if it looks a little funky, that's why. It works in pretty similarly to Propellerhead's Reason, so in the sense that you have all these little instruments and synthesizers, virtual machines. So hopefully you can get something out of this, I suppose. Alright, so I do this a lot with my friends, so it's one of my favorite things to do is actually break down my tracks and show people how I made stuff. And so I've gotten a lot of requests to do something like this, so might as well do it. So starting off, we have the drums, which is made painstakingly recreated the drum kit that GarageBand comes with. When I would just take MIDI track files from popular rock songs that I enjoy, and they would all use the same exact drum kit. And so I just went through and grabbed a bunch of machinists and just placed in all the samples. They're all pitched around, panned around, pitched, gain staged, at least how they should be, kind of. In terms of this track, at least. If any of you Audio Tool people want to use this, just ask. I'll let you have it. It's not like I'm like keeping it or anything. Here's the samples. Oh, they didn't show up. It's fine. Oh wait, no. There's probably a few more that aren't showing up for some reason. If Audio Tool had made a mistake with loading the samples, that would be pretty embarrassing. So anyway, for drums, so this track's got a bit of a story. Before I get started, it's got a bit of a story. And this version, it's about a guy on his deathbed, basically, in a hospital somewhere, reflecting on his life. It's pretty depressing. I know, I'm sorry, but it is something that I think about often. And so in this beginning, we have a kick drum that's kind of supposed to represent like how a heartbeat sounds. And then what's nice about this and what allows me to speed this along a lot is that it's basically the exact same drum beat throughout the entire track, and it only switches up in a couple sections. So here's the beat. So that crash sample actually would probably get pretty annoying if I continued playing it, because the one thing one of the many things actually that separates this from a real recorded track is the fact that the samples always sound the same every single time. So I had to program these all in by hand. It wasn't that hard. I like doing it. It's pretty fun. But so this hat comes in as well later on. And so these are the crashes and stuff, and then there's this final machinist down here has just a single sample in it. It's a large crash pan slightly to the right. So this is how it sounds in the intro and the choruses in the in the verses, it sounds pretty much the same, just slightly simplified. So you can hear that this crash sample is no longer playing. And there's only a few other times when the drums actually change, and that would be in the bridge, which is right here. So the kick and snare change a bit of, change their patterns up a little bit. And one other place at the very end of this section, before the second half of the last chorus, there is a little bit of a drum fill. Kind of. And then it switches to a more typical upbeat, faster paced beat. And that becomes important later on when I'll explain the story about this track. Moving on from the drums, we have what's mistakenly referred to as a clean guitar. This is taken straight from my little rock template that I made. This in no way, shape, or form actually resembles a guitar, and I'm not even using it like one in this track. And I'm just using it for its noise. So you can see it's just a single C-sharp note, just repeated. It's a 16th note, I believe. No, it's an 8th. So it's an 8th note that's just being repeated over and over and over again. And in occasion, it actually does speed up to 16th notes. You'll notice that's a common theme as I continue through this breakdown. So yeah, definitely not a guitar, but that's how it's being used. So I'm actually going to skip over the bass guitar for now, and I'm going to move on to the pluck, because, so I wrote this chord progression. I feel weird saying that I wrote it, because I didn't necessarily like write it out, but you know. So I may do this wrong, but whenever I like want to make a song, I first pick out like what scale I want, and for this song I don't actually remember what it is. I think it may be like, it's definitely in a minor key, but there are some occasions when I had to go out of key, and this is one of them, but I had to get that specific, like this note is out of key specifically, and it really actually helps with the emotion, as you'll hear. So this pluck is actually the first thing I ever made in this draft, and so that's what I also made the chord progression in. And so here's the out of key note. And so this is important that it's this way, because if I were to put it in the same key that everything else is in, so instead of playing whatever that note is, a G sharp, it plays an A, this is what it sounds like. And it just sounds a little bit more, generic, I guess. And so I like having it this way. It just kind of works. So next up is this synthesizer that's called a flange saw. It's actually just a oh, I suppose I should go through the sound design process too. So I'll do that in a moment. So the flange saw is actually just a square wave and a sawtooth down. Sawtooth down is pitched downwards, and there's the thing that's giving it its name. It's flanger. So it sounds very weird. I typically don't use flanger in this way. I guess its intended way. I don't typically do that because I don't like it, but it works in this track, so I kept it. So I should mention, by the way, that it plays some more other notes that the pluck synth isn't playing. the pluck synth eventually starts playing those same notes as well. It gets another layer. And so back to the pluck synth, because I kind of forgot to go over that. During this intro bit, it starts playing double. I don't know all the terminology for this. So you can hear it gets that extra high layer up there, which kind of adds to the melodramatic feel, I suppose. In the verses, it simplifies a little bit, because I just wanted it more in the background. So this is a typical sine wave pluck that I always make. Without it's really just helped along by the reverb. Without it, it just sounds pretty boring. And so it's got a pitch modulation of 12 semitones, very short, to give it that transient, I guess. And the filtering is basically the same as it normally would be. I just took out the low end. There wasn't much low end anyway, but just in case. And then a limiter. Also just in case. This is just by habit. And so in the... I think that's actually it for the pluck. It doesn't really do anything else for the remainder of the track, except for whatever I've already previously showed. Alright, so the flange saw, back to this, basically does the same thing. It just repeats occasionally. Apparently it used to show up in the chorus, but I got rid of it. I think maybe because the chorus started getting a little bit too loud. So it really only shows up in those brief sections. So there we go. I'll get to those in a moment, because those are really important. So we have something that's affectionately titled Studer. It's a stutter choir preset that I kind of modified a little bit. So turning everything off, it sounds like this. Oh wait, it's over here. So the first forgot it has a lot of release. So the first modification I did to this, I didn't do any other like intense changes to how this sounds, I guess, but I changed the rate to 1/16. So we get this. And then I put some reverb on it. Very slight reverb. And then I got rid of its high end because I didn't want it. And so it really shows up as a background element. And so this plays, I believe, in the verses in the second half. Kind of. And then it shows up in the first chorus, I believe. No, this is the second verse. I didn't really lay out. It's kind of hard to tell what's what. So this is the second chorus, or second verse, my god. And I actually don't know what these are doing. I think they're for these. Oh, so that means I'll have to get to them later. But yeah, it shows up occasionally, not much else. Next up is this, which doesn't actually get its own name, so I'm not entirely sure what it is or what it's doing. So it's a mystery for you and me both. It appears to be a sine wave, so I think, or saw, so I think it's a certain pluck that's playing. Oh yeah, I know what this is actually. Okay, so this is this shows up, I believe, during the choruses and during the second half of the second verse. And it's just playing the same chord progression as everything else, but simplified slightly, and it doesn't do that typical out-of-key note that everything else is doing. Well, Okay, it might be. I'm not entirely sure. So that's pretty simple. It has a few gain automations, so when it shows up during the second verse, it kind of fades in. And because everything else is playing as well, you don't notice it until it shows up. So that's about it. It doesn't show up anywhere else. Yeah. Alright. Moving on. We have an audio track. Now this audio track is very special because it's actually not doing anything. It's not even plugged in. So I don't exactly know why this is here, but I don't want to touch it because I think I had plans for that. Okay. This is also important, so I'll get back to that later. So this thing is, I know what this is. This is just this very simple square wave, I believe, with some reverb on it. Yeah, it's a square wave with some reverb on it, quite literally. And this is meant to mimic the sound of a heart monitor. And it just does that for the entire thing. As you can see, it actually used to fade out beforehand. So like it would have played that solid note and its volume would have turned down to fade into the track. And while that does kind of work, it messes with the story. So instead I save that for here when it fades out. And I'll get to that later. And so it doesn't really do anything besides that, but the sound does come back to make some musical additions, playing the same thing that saw wave did as well, just very quietly. And so it does that, and also in the second half of the bridge, it comes back to play the heart rate monitor sound again, at basically full volume, and also the sound of it flatlining fades in as well. And in the final chorus, it plays the noise as well, and then it ends with the heartbeat monitor again. But this time it flatlines at the end. So next, this may hurt some of your ears, so I think I might need to reduce the volume of the recording. No, it's fine, it's quiet. So this is actually something that I made myself. It's just a simple high-pitched string. I don't like calling it, it's not a string, but it adds a little bit to the atmosphere. So it plays in the intro, it plays during this second half of the verses, and it plays throughout the entirety of whatever this section is. I don't know the terminology for the break before the final chorus, but this time it fades in, and then it plays throughout the entirety of the final chorus. Lastly is actually one of my favorite things that I did, and so it's a note splitter, which means it's actually connected to several other devices. And those several other devices are two presets. One of them is created by user Project Epsilon, called Nice Saws. And this is a really old preset, but I like it. I still use it occasionally. Oh yeah, let me turn off all the effects, actually, so you can hear it. So that's what that sounds like. And then we have a preset called Bell-ish, which sounds like a bell. And so merge those two together. And then I did some EQing. I took out all the low end, boosted some of the mids, and then got rid of some of that, I guess. And then I put this on, which gives it a little bit of a delay. And then this is another limiter, but it's also controlling the volume. And so because the Nice Saws preset comes with its own fade out reverb type kind of deal, I don't actually put any reverb on it. And so the majority of the track, it just plays this while fading out a volume. And so it does that in the verses, and yeah, that's it. And in the end, but it takes a little longer to fade out this time. But in the intro, the second half, it plays this melody that I actually really like. And yeah, that's about it for the background elements. So now let's get to the actual important stuff. So because this is a synth rock track, I almost said synthwave, it's got to have like guitars, right? Well, I myself cannot play guitar, so instead I like to use fake synthesized guitars, hence the name synth rock. And so this is a group of presets that I found that have a much more electronic sound than a few others that I've used in my tracks. And so for this track, I actually wanted a more electronic sound, just because I was inspired by a track that I had heard that did that. And so I used it. And so, as per most rock tracks, there's so this track has got a left guitar and a right guitar, pitched to the left and right respectively, and they're known as left/lead and right/rhythm. So they're playing different notes, and that's a little technique I picked up on from a few tutorials. Is it's not enough to just pan them to different sides, but you also have to have them playing different notes, and they even have to be processed differently. So as you can see, they're processed a little differently. Yeah, the right guitar has a bit more chorus on it than the left. Aside from that, though, most of it's pretty much the same. Right guitar also has some more distortion on it. And aside from that, I believe everything should be about the same. It's all just mild differences to make it sound fuller, I guess. So anyway, here's what the left guitar sounds like. It's got a bit of automations for the decay time and the release time. And so it builds in with this. And then, so the left guitar, being the lead, plays the same exact chord progression as everything else is playing in eighth notes. Okay, and so that doesn't change. During the verses, I turn the decay time all the way up so it sounds like someone's like strumming it, I guess, but not really strumming it, just playing longer notes. And so that's just playing the root notes of the chords, I believe. So, yeah. In the choruses, it plays the same as the intro. Here, in the bridge, it plays something else entirely. And the second half of the bridge, it starts playing that same note pattern that a few other synthesizers are playing as well. In the final half of the final chorus, it switches from being 8th notes to 16th notes. Because of the change in pace. aside from that, that's basically all the notes that that's playing. So for the right/rhythm guitar, it's playing slightly different chords. I think they're actually the same, but there are a few notes that are changed around. So one thing I've noticed about this right guitar is that it has a bit more of a transient on it. So that's another thing I forgot to mention. So it's playing the same, I believe it plays the same notes during the verse as the left guitar. Yes, it does. So during the choruses, it plays the same thing. During the bridge, it plays the same thing as the left guitar. So the idea behind this, the difference between them is actually the release time. So that's why you hear a little bit of difference. And so, yeah. And it does the same thing that the left guitar does in the final chorus as well, where it speeds up. So together, they sound like this. Go here. And then faster. Yeah. So last couple things now. We have what is called the bass guitar. And I'm not gonna lie, for a synthesizer, it actually sounds pretty good. It's a preset that I modified and put on a few effects. I don't know why I was doing all this, but sure, why not? So it's also just playing the root notes of the chords, so it's not that important. I think this is one of the few things that doesn't actually speak. No, it does. Okay. So I'm not gonna lie, I think that would be really hard to play out live. Which is probably a good thing that this is not live recorded, because that would be hell. Okay, final thing is this, which is, so a little bit of history here, not history, backstory. I cannot write lyrics, I don't know how, and I'm not good at it. And so there are no lyrics to this track. There were originally supposed to be, but instead I used this very soft, I believe it's a sine wave, with a triangle, or sawtooth down, a bit of mixing on it, but and a lot of glide. It does have a lot of glide and release. I thought it had reverb, but I guess oh, there it is. Okay, so I'm a little weird, and I moved all of these effects up here for some reason. So actually, they belong down here. So it's got a bit of chorus on it. It does in fact have reverb on it. Some more mixing, another limiter, and some more panning to put it in the center. So this is meant to replicate, like, I guess, the notes that someone would sing if they were to sing it. I'm not going to play all of them because you can just listen to the track. It does attempt to do some harmonies at some point, but I also don't really know harmonies all that well. Yeah. Oh, shoot, I just messed something up. So, so this sound is actually doing some not pretend vocals in some parts as well. It does this. I don't know if that's even audible in the actual track, but it does it during the final chorus as well. And so the interesting thing to note about the final chorus is in the second half, it stays away from the notes that I play for the second half of the other choruses, and instead goes for the notes that were played during the bridge. Yeah, which is important. So altogether, it sounds like this. Okay, so now that that's done, let me quickly, because I'm already at half an hour, quickly go over the story of this track. So in the beginning, it starts with our protagonist, our guy. He's in the hospital, right? And he's just laying there, and he's just thinking, because he knows he's going to die. And he's okay with it at this point, but he's worried that he hasn't lived the life that he wanted to live. And so as he's thinking about this, I believe, I don't remember, and I'm kind of making a little bit of this up on the spot, but something happens and now he's basically in his memories. And so the verses, this intro bit's just kind of introducing the song. The verses are basically him reflecting on certain moments in his life. The choruses are essentially telling him that he needs to let it go. And stop worrying about it, because he'll be fine. So in the second verse, he ends up getting a little bit angry with himself, because of a mistake that he had made previously. So he's angry because he thinks he's stupid for wallowing in his own self-pity. And so the chorus comes back to remind him that it's okay. And then the bridge is basically... I honestly don't know what the bridge is supposed to mean. I kind of forgot a little bit about it. So let's see if I can make something up on the spot. Let's see. It's probably just him arguing with himself, to be honest. Because, yeah, so it goes into this more darker sound, and then swaps between that darker sound and a more melodic one, I guess. And then the final bit, he just doesn't really know anything, and is like slowly being consumed by his own self-pity. And so this comes back, the heart monitor comes back to remind him of his own mortality, and it starts fading in to make it sound like he's like kind of getting stressed out over the fact that he hasn't done enough yet. And then he just gets snapped back to reality. And then, you know, the chorus comes back as usual. And this final part, the reason everything gets faster is because all of a sudden he realizes he's lost the argument with himself, and all of a sudden is no longer okay with dying, and wants to get up and live his life. So he's going back to that moment where he was telling himself that it was useless, and repeating that here. That's basically his conscience saying, hey, there's no point in doing this. And then finally it fades back into reality. And then guess what? He just fucking dies. And so it ends on this little pluck, I guess. No particular reason. Just felt like doing that. So anyway, there's that downer of a track. The album version will tell a bit of a different story, so it'll probably be a little bit shorter, to be honest, because I've gotten some complaints from friends that this track is too long. And so the final version, the album version, will probably be a little bit shorter, and will most likely feature a few different sounds and stuff, and it'll tell a different story about how. So if you guys have been following the Voidwalker story, it's about how he's remembering back when he was just a normal guy, and back before he had to do all of this save the universe junk. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching if you made it this far. I'll probably get better at doing these breakdowns later on, but yeah, there's that downer of a track. I still like it though. It's nice. Alright, see ya.